Thank you for coming together. I have been just so pleased. I've been telling people like why this is such a fun gathering. And I don't know, did you see the RSVP list? Did you look at each other like on that thing? I get to watch it grow the whole time, but we have gathered just a really, really invested and creative and we've got the right people in the room right now, and that matters a lot. Among you are everything from researchers to professional game designers to people that are frontline teachers in K-12 and higher ed. We've got people that make things for a living. We've got people that study that for a living. We've got people in policy, and we've got funders. And we have the right people together today, and that really excites me. So we've got a really big announcement this is kind of the first part of it, in that we have this thing called Rally Wisconsin. And it's this amazing partnership between the Department of Public Instruction and the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery. And this is our time to talk about it and share that. Give you a little bit of the vision of that, a little bit of the purpose of that, and then hopefully end with some really actionable things that you can do to really transform teaching and learning in the state of Wisconsin. So that's kind of our trajectory for tonight. That sounds heavy, so we just wanted to mellow it with a little house music and a little, and just kind of give that some room to breathe. But that is the charge. But I do think this is how that kind of stuff actually happens. So I would love to hear a couple words from kind of our interested parties here. And I can see the David Krakauer, who directs WID, is here with us. And I'd love it for him to say a couple words about education. And then we have Sheila Briggs and we also have Kiefer from the Department of Public Instruction who are going to say a couple words. And when they're done, I've got about 15 slides or so to give you an idea of the direction we're heading, very tangibly, very practically. So that's where we're at. Thank you for coming out. So without further ado, David.
Thank you very much. Oh yeah, no. Yes, I should apologize. I'm in another universe. It was 4 hours talking about some statistical physics problem, and then David said, "No, you have to come down." Okay, I know. So, but look, I mean, I'm delighted that this turned out. It's an incredible project. It's unbelievably well aligned with our philosophy. The mission, if you don't know it here, is to study the information supporting life, from cells to societies. And so this fits very squarely within our mission. When I first met with this group of people, they weren't exactly sure what they were doing. They saw all of the elements and felt that they should all be put together. And it was a jigsaw that was worth solving. And I think my preferred metaphor for the way you do science is you drop a match into a box of mercury. and then you hope that it all goes well. And that's what this is. And it's, you trust people. It's a bunch of very smart, creative people. I think one of the reasons why it fits so well in this institute is because we are so tech-savvy, experimentally well-informed. The idea would be that there would be synergies. If you could take the kinds of stuff that David and his group do and the state's interest in the problem and combine it with the incredible analytical power of some of the groups in this building in mathematics, in computation, in visualization, we could produce something together that was very special. So it is an experiment. I'm very delighted to have played a tiny role in helping make it happen, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of you. David.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sheila?
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for having us. We are so thrilled to have the opportunity to partner in this project. Kurt and I were saying on the way over here that it amazes us how lucky we are to have such an incredible university right here in our backyard, and to not partner with the amazing people here at the university would be a travesty. I was saying to someone earlier, both my kids have participated in various events at UW-Madison, particularly here in this building, College for Kids stuff, and there is no conversation other than I can't wait to go to UW-Madison, and this is the only choice for them on the horizon. And so both my husband and I are alumnus here and are thrilled that that's their intention. But it just really is an amazing place. This building is amazing. This campus is amazing, and the Wisconsin idea, all for that. And all about that. And so DPI is very thrilled and happy to be able to be a part of that. The job that I have at DPI is Kurt's kind of counterpart. So he's kind of the tech person, and I work more in the curriculum and instruction and teaching and learning side of things. And I've said more than once that I feel so fortunate in Wisconsin, because it's not like this in every state, that we work really collaboratively on almost everything we do. I feel very fortunate and lucky that Kurt says all the time that really he exists and his folks exist to do things to support what my folks are trying to do and to support the schools out in the field. And so I feel very fortunate to do that. And certainly partnerships like this that can bring such an amazing wealth of resources for our teachers in our schools to really do things differently and to be able to really engage our kids is something we're all for. I was at a keynote at a conference several years ago. I think Kurt was sitting at the table as well. And there was this very simple moment where the speaker was talking about something that should have been like right up front and center, but it took somebody to say it and for me to sit and listen to it to have it really fully sink in. We were talking about how years ago kids used to come to school to get the knowledge because there was really they had no ability to get that from anyone other than maybe their parents and what their parents might pass on. There was no internet. There was no way to just go and find something. Talked about the big moment, when encyclopedias became available for people to purchase and have in their home. And it was like, wow, I've got some knowledge right here in my house. But nowadays, kids can pull their phone out and have access to more knowledge, than any teacher ever had in the history of the world. And so kids no longer have to come to school to get that knowledge. And so if we continue to operate in our schools like that, we're going to have really disengaged kids. And although I kind of knew that, it was the way this was laid out that really was a huge aha for me. And it's a real simple test for me. If the kids can get the answer on their phone, you shouldn't be asking them to memorize it or asking them to write it down. I mean, that's just not something that's going to engage our kids, and they don't need that because I have no fear that computers could ever replace our teachers unless that's what they're doing. So if that's what the teacher is doing, is asking them questions like, what's the longitude and latitude of such and such a point on the map? Well, their phone can tell them that really quickly, and them memorizing that and having to be tested on that, they could be replaced by the kid's phone. But there is such an important role for our teachers to play, and we are so thrilled to have partnership with the university and the Institutes of Discovery to be able to bring the kinds of things to our kids and give our kids the kind of experiences that are going to engage them and really have them pushing their learning where we want them to be and not just coming up with things that they can find the answer to on their phone. So again, thanks for having us. Thanks for letting us be a part of this. And I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Kurt Kiefer.
Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, David. I too am engaged in this for one reason and one reason only, and that's the collaboration that this project provides. Many of you in this room I call my colleagues, and it's imperative that we continue to build those collaborations across our organizations for one reason and one reason only: the betterment of this state. And I too will echo what was already said, and that is we are doing this for two words. Well, three, I guess, if I have to use the Wisconsin idea. That is truly why we are doing this. You are an amazing group of folks, and we are so lucky to have you to work with. I represent the tech side of this equation, but I want you to know, and Sheila knows this is true, I understand the teaching part of it as probably as closely as you can without actually teaching, because I wake up next to one every morning. And the same one. Thank you. For the last 34 years. Just to yep, there you go. Thank you for, she'll appreciate that. That's what grounds me every single day in the work that I do. And I think it grounds what you do in the work that you do as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. I've been sitting watching you do stuff for a long time, and we've been trying really hard to make things come together. And I think with the partnerships that we have forged in this with this institution, we've made those things happen, and we're really excited to watch this thing unfold. So thank you all for what you do. Thank you for being our partner, and let's go get them.
Thanks, Mike. So, yeah, what are we talking about? It's big and it's exciting and it has all the right people. So what is it? Well, I am so glad we just called out this thing. I mean, this really is the Wisconsin idea. And by that, I would say, the thing that excites me here is I am excited that we are very practically trying to do what you'd think would be a simple thing. And that is to marry the incredible education research that is happening at the University of Wisconsin in Madison with the practice of education in the state of Wisconsin. That sounds tangible, right? It's hard to do that. There's a lot of forces against that. It's not the most simple thing that you would guess. So Rally Wisconsin is the name of this initiative for us to try this. And we use this word rally importantly because what we want to do is raise a flag. We want to put a big banner up in the state of Wisconsin, and we want that banner to represent a certain gathering of people. So the quote that we've been kind of joking around with this is, we want to raise a flag for awesome and find out who will gather. What do I mean by awesome? Well, I mean by awesome, we want to find out things that should scale, not are easy to scale. We're trying to learn through prototypes and not products, right? Instead of vendors, we're thinking about building things and seeing if they work through pilots and through research. We're talking about creating education experiences that might not be easy, but the learning science tells us that they're real. So these are experiences, for one, that involve contexts, they involve actions, right? So we're talking about a very particular kind of knowing and learning, but we're talking about it right here, and we're talking about doing it with real teachers and real kids all throughout the state. Let me give you a quick description of some of those things. And that brings us really to this new thing we had to create called Field Day. To do that work, we needed an entirely new kind of institution. We needed a new home. We needed a new lab. We needed a place that kind of could benefit from the academic world, but not be tied to its policies and its reward structures, but was right connected to it. We needed a place that could have an actual production studio and be tied to excellence in making and producing digital media, but not be tied only to the market and only going in the direction it wants to go. So Field Day and our partnership with the Institute of Discovery is a perfect match for this, where we can think about researchers as well as producers cohabitating ideas, making new things together, and kind of leveraging the best of both worlds. So let me give you a couple examples of what that looks like, and we've got a 90-second video that hopefully will explain that. I know you are really far over here, and it might be worth spending 30 seconds to reshift towards this direction so that you can actually see this. Does that start to paint a picture? We have three main themes that we're just going to hit really hard. Games and simulations, learning through design, and over here, field research. So what are we practically doing? Like, how does this play out? Well, when we talk about games and simulations, we're not talking about just digital things, we're talking about analog things too. But at the center of it, we're talking about taking on roles, identity. We're talking about pursuing actual goals. We're talking about failing along the way, interacting with systems, cause and effect relationships. We're talking about basically reverse engineering the world in your head and finding out what happens when you jump off in this direction. Let me show you a quick project that we've got going on with the Material Research Center here. It's an NSF-funded project. And some sliver of their unbelievable research is going towards outreach. And I can show you an app that we just started to pilot and play with.
At middle school, when it's time to teach about atoms and atom behavior, the best thing going right now is just circles and electrons. And so the idea that we could present teachers with something that would allow for that lesson to become hands-on and palpable was really exciting.
So we talked about this idea of putting the physics behind a computer simulation so that students and teachers could use an app to learn about how atoms move, how they connect to each other, how they build structures, and the effect of things like temperature and pressure on atomic structure.
There is experiment, there's theory where you just write down the equations, and then there's simulation where you take equations and you actually recreate the world virtually on a computer. And the power of that is extraordinary.
You know, games are built around modeling something. As you're able to predict where that model is going to go, you're actually having mastery over that topic. So generally, simulation games are going to take all the power of simulation, but now they're going to give it structure, and they're going to give it play, and they're going to give it the ability to explore and see if you really understand it or not. So we're just beginning a process of testing with small focus groups as well as larger classrooms. We're seeking feedback on how real people interact with this thing that we've made. And we're going to be iterating and refining that design to make it more playful. It's going to have more guidance in it. And generally, it's going to be something that can be used more and more kind of on its own in a more robust way. So one of the really cool things we see when we put this app into the hands of kids is that even the ones that are acing the tests have some really kind of weird conceptions about the molecular world, right? One of the funniest ones, and most challenging actually, has been that when you melt something, they don't get that the little balls don't melt. Now these are kids that are acing the tests, right? So the other one that we don't get is when we vaporize something, it doesn't always go up. Right? So what's really interesting about building these kind of simulation-based treatments is we expose all of these misconceptions that can easily hide behind a paper test or a lecture, but just can't hide behind an interactive piece of media like this. So our plan here is to build a lot of these, and I'll talk more about that. Our next thing is to get into field research. This is really a no-brainer kind of avenue to pursue. Games are really good at mocking up systems and kind of mediating risk and taking on role, but they're still so darn digital. They still have you looking at a screen and interacting with a simulation of a thing. Now, the funny thing about the real world is that it's messy. We've spent all of these years developing all these fields and all these disciplines to come up with the vocabulary and the categories to try to make sense out of that messy world. But it doesn't fit. The world is a little more complicated than anything we're coming up with. What we would like to do here is get kids out into the field. Now, what is the field? For biology, that's literally a grassland. For ornithology, that means the forest. But we can do this with all kinds of things, from ethnographic research in a folklore class to kind of understanding topics of actual critical geography by going out and interviewing people around the town you live in. So the idea is, how can we use the frameworks and vocabulary of these disciplines to start a conversation with students so they go into the real world and look for examples of these things? And then use the classroom as a place to debrief and to try to make meaning and to try to categorize these interactions. Does that make sense? It's a no-brainer. It's just the real world doing its thing. Now, we get involved because we try to make this easy. So we use a lot of digital tools along the way. We use the high-definition camera that's in your pocket all the time, and try to put some methods around this that actually align really well with learning science. The last big theme we've got is learning through design. this came out really early, and actually John was in the room, I remember. John Fotenhauer, I'll call him out later, but he's an engineer here that we've worked with. And there was this moment where we were designing a game about cryogenics, which is the science of getting stuff really, really cold. At least that's how I would explain it. And a really interesting thing happened where about a month into the project, I started to really understand cryogenics as a game designer. To design a game about a thing means that you've got to hack at it from every possible angle, understand every input and output, every possible thing that would come out the other end. And the process of doing that design, it bangs on your understanding in every possible way. We're really excited about some theories like meta-representational competency, for example. That's like a thick word. But the idea here is that if you have to produce a thing like an essay or a talk, the method in which you're producing that output is going to be completely tied up in the way and how you understand that thing. Well, what if we throw a curveball at you and make you design a board game or an interactive location-based mobile app for interactive fiction? We call them situated documentaries. The way that that has students interacting with things like a history lesson is so different because they need to now take primary sources and turn them into virtual characters and create simulations of exactly what does happen during the Boston Tea Party and why, because the simulation has to play it out. So the kinds of understandings we see there are profound. The other thing that I think it really does here is that the teacher doesn't have to do all the work. I heard this recently from some of the folks in CISA 1, and they had this great quote. If at the end of the week, the teacher is the one that's exhausted and the kids are the ones that are just numb, we are doing something really wrong. Instead, what we're looking for is situations where both teacher and student have to make something, and they both are being stretched. They're both a little out of their element. They're both having to look at the world in a new way. So in the past, we've partnered with groups like the Library of Congress and the Minnesota History Center and a bunch of others to explore this out. We've worked with teachers here at UW, and now I think we're really ready to go K-12. So that's our 3 themes. Our last one is the oddball, and it never fits the branding and marketing stuff, but this is the other category. I just want to show you a project that's an example of some of the other directions that we're really excited about exploring, but haven't been really formalized just yet. So this is a project we did with Minnesota, and this is the kind of project that we're really excited to see grow, hopefully with groups like the Veterans Museum here in town, and also the History Center. Some museum projects hopefully will look like this.
Play the Past.
This is awesome!
Puts history right into students' hands,
Awesome!
making it more engaging and more fun.
I won! Yes!
Play the Past is a groundbreaking new way for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders to use handheld technology to deepen their learning.
They used fur and traded with the Europeans.
Students are given an iPod Touch to explore the Then Now Wow exhibit at the Minnesota History Center.
You guys trading?
Yeah.
Students use the iPod to uncover stories, pursue quests, solve problems, and make choices to personalize their learning.
You need 2 stars for each one.
Students also collect digital items throughout the exhibit.
Dude, you know we can actually trade items?
These items go into a digital backpack that's sent back to the classroom. Teachers and students can then download the items for further research or new projects to build on what they've learned and extend the museum experience.
Okay, what do we do?
Play the Past also addresses state academic standards in multiple disciplines and brings the Northern Lights curriculum to life. Ask about Play the Past when booking your next field trip to the Minnesota History Center,
So now I think we get to go to the mine shaft.
so your 21st century students can play and learn in a 21st century way.
Sorry, I know that was very promotional, but it does tell the story really quickly. So I really have to give thanks to Kurt Squire, who was my advisor when I was a grad student here, and this phrase of designing experiences. It was really something to meet a museum that knew about designed experience as well, but they build stuff out of physical things. So really what we were able to do with this project is have game designers partner with exhibits designers as well as the people that write the curriculum, the textbook, and we were able to build things like a 15,000 square foot simulated mine with scaffolds and rock faces and a bunch of sensors in it. And as you do things like drill holes or load dynamite sticks into the walls, we're sending signals to the phone. So on the phone, you have a story. You're a Swedish immigrant trying to survive and make a living in the mines of Minnesota. But in the physical world, you're kids running around and playing. And understanding firsthand exactly how hard it is to organize a successful strike. I mean, to get all those kids to stop moving for 15 seconds, that's all you have to do, 15 seconds. It's impossible. But then they tell the stories. In some of the early research we did, we followed a bunch of kids around for an entire hour, actually, with clipboards and just wrote down everything they said and everything they did. We saw some really great role play activities that would take place. There was one kid, for example, that hopped around on one leg after he got his leg blown off in the mine for the rest of the experience. Everybody in the fur trade starts speaking in British accents for some reason. But whatever it is, they're inhabiting history. They're not learning about it, right? They're living it out and they're telling their stories in an interesting way. If we can go full circle with this, what the next round of workshops is that the kids then get a copy of the game that they can then hack themselves and hook into all those sensors so when they go back to the museum with their parents and friends, you can play their versions of these stories. So that full circle thing is really what excites us. Okay, so what are we really doing here now? We're kind of circling around. Well, if I had to summarize it, what we're trying to do is amplify educators. How are we doing that? Well, one thing we're doing is workshops. We're not only teaching people to build games themselves, or teaching people to design field research activities or things like this, but we're teaching them how to teach people to do those things. Does that make sense? So if you come to one of our workshops, which is going to be a day long, here and all around the state, the goal is by the end of it, you might walk away with a prototype of a board game that you designed. More importantly, you've walked away with the skills so that you can facilitate the kids making the board game because you're going to get too busy on Monday, and they're going to have to go the next iterations on it. So this is one method that we're going to go down. The other one is that we are in a place to partner with a production team with educators themselves. It pains me to think of all of the incredible ideas that are locked up in the educators across the state that have zero resources at their disposal. We don't want them to go write a grant for NSF that wants people to learn more about STEM. That's not going to happen. Instead, we want to figure out a way to find them, pick a handful of them, put our team around them, and put them right at the center of a design process that's coming from their felt need and their soil. And if those pilots work out well, then, of course, everything we do is open source, and we can put a promotion team around that. We can share those things around the world for free. Oh, just to pull some of these out, I just want to make a statement about the range of these kinds of projects. Everything from, this was like the business school where we're trading international currencies, to a prototype we're working on with the Vets Museum to take on the role of a Civil War surgeon, to simulating cryogenics, to sustainability, to thermodynamics. We really are all over the place between the humanities and the hard sciences, and I think that is very sensible for us to do. Our sweet spot is really going to be in the smaller design. There's some folks from Filament around here, and guys like this are just doing, they are, in my mind, the best game designers that are doing educational stuff in the world. But the projects they're doing, we're hopefully doing the things that might lead to those. We're doing the things that maybe we can get done in 6 months with a very limited budget and make all the difference on the really small scale. The other thing that we're doing is we're finding that every time that we build a game, you end up with a tool to build a game, and we want to distribute those tools. ERIS is one of our first creations, and it's doing really well. It has about 30,000 people using it all around the world at this point, and it came out of some really basic research here at UW. So this is one of these tools that is pushing forward numerous years ahead of where the market is at, but it's also free and open and community-based. Once a year we have a national or international summit around this here in Madison, tied in with the Games Learning and Society Conference, where we hear just incredible stories of people doing everything from, again, sustainability to microorganisms to telling historical stories and doing documentaries. So we're going to be sharing a lot of production tools so that people can make their own things. Organizing events is also a really large part of how we get this done. In 2011, we just experimented with the idea of doing what we called a game jam across the world. It started with a few friends and a few sites, and just for the heck of it, we're like, hey, we've got this video conferencing software. Let's invite anybody. And we had everything from the one kid alone in Colombia sitting in his bedroom who worked with us over 2 days to build a game, to big groups of students in New Mexico at the university there that were working on things. Here we had about 70 people from K-12 as well as university folks. And we ended up building 127 games in 48 hours. So this is just this incredible way to design a lot of content and to learn a lot about learning and to learn a lot about making really rapidly. So we plan on doing another one of these, hopefully this summer, and we're kind of in the logistical phases of planning that. And the last thing that may be the most important is we need to shift this discussion of education. In my mind, we really need to quit talking about these policies and start talking about the people that are doing it and the amazing heroes of teachers that we have. I really don't know how to handle a lot of the policy stuff. I don't know all of the issues that go into picking a curriculum. It's really complicated. Luckily, we don't have to do that. Instead, what we want to be at the center of is, again, naming awesome, putting videos around them, getting them on the local news. And if we could do one thing really, really well, it would be that every night in Tomahawk, Wisconsin, you would see an amazing teacher on screen, and you would hear the story that University of Wisconsin Madison researchers are collaborating with this teacher to do this amazing stuff. I want that story told over and over and over and over. And that's, again, our Wisconsin idea, part of it. So that's where we're at. That's our plan. Who are we doing it with? Well, I'm going to pull out a couple people, and I hope everybody is in the room. Phil Doherty over here is with our team. We recruited him after he won a CS Nest contest for a beer pong game that he made that involved not only Flash, but like WebSocket communications to an Arduino that made the beer pong work. And that took about 10 minutes to realize that he was our guy. Phil's been with us for a number of years now and is just an incredible software engineer, and he probably could get paid a lot more if he'd went anywhere outside of Madison. But for some reason, he's sticking it out, and I would invite you to talk to him. Oh, sorry. Another person I'll pull out is Kevin Alford in the back. Raise his hand. Kevin's done web development. I mean, you've even done some animatronics. He's a hacker at heart. He goes to Burning Man every year. His personality is everywhere from teaching kids, like on Saturdays, you teach a class for interactive media, to actually coming in and cranking out real code with us day after day after day. Kevin's kind of a new member to the team, and he's really the mastermind right now with the new ERIS authoring tool that he personally built from the ground up. Another person I'll pull out who's new with us is Mike Tolley, who is another software engineer with our group. Mike is into some kind of theoretical programming languages that I never can keep up with and goes to community gatherings around those things, but also is really into music and kind of the logic of music and programming music. He is at the center of all of our mobile field tools at this point. Sarah Gagnon, my wife, who is over here, Sarah has a background in managing volunteers in a large distributed international education organization. So she's used to working with people that aren't getting paid to be there. Therefore, you have to be an expert manager and be developing them to stick around. But she also stopped doing that to pursue an art degree where she has a background in textile design. And she really brings kind of a really nice mix of skills from operational and strategic all the way through aesthetics. So the things we do resonate with kind of the heart and soul of the people that we're working with. Let me also pull out Anda. And here's Anda. Anda's got a background in library science, but also was a freelance photographer successfully for a number of years. She's kind of a master with words. I had the first time where I was able to write a grant where Anda interviewed me, and then I was in San Francisco, and at like midnight I got a draft. And like a day later, we submitted it, and it was the least stressful grant I have ever written in my life. And it was by far the best written thing. So Anda's at this place of finding the stories, producing the stories, calling out excellence for what it is. Jim Matthews, who is... There's Jim Matthews. I would really say Jim is the soul of our team. We've been working together for years and years at this point. He teaches half-time at Clark Street School. He is the kind of teacher we want to replicate. Jim is that person who goes deep with real kids, understands the nuance of that, but also happens to have a PhD in curriculum and instruction, so he can geek out on things like embodiment theory or place in community education. We also have a number of students. So Hala is with us here. Hala's in geography right now with a background in sales and organizing youth to do all kinds of stuff. She's really at the center of helping us produce events, kind of build networks and stay in touch with people. If you haven't already heard from her, she's just a gatherer of people and a wonderful force on our team. Yu Ching, who is back here with Kevin. I would gander to say Yuqing is the best computer science student that we've ever had, save Phil, of course. But she has been the lead engineer on the Atom Touch project, and it's fun to meet real computer scientists that like to play and make games and dig into the hard algorithmic problems and not just the really simple stuff. Rochelle is also with us somewhere. Hey, Rochelle. Rochelle was really an amazing find for us as well. She's an education researcher in training right now. She's just a really good observer and a keen thinker. She does qualitative as well as some quantitative work with us. At the end of the day, she's really going to be behind most of the white papers and kind of academic writing that we do, helping us gather data and kind of crunch some of that data. She was mentored by our old colleague, Brianne Litz, who now has, did a postdoc, and now she's a professor and all that stuff. So we lost her. But we're really excited to have Rochelle join us as well. And the last member of our team, Tyler, who can't be here, is an art student with Madison College. By the way, Madison College is really nailing it right now with interactive media and 3D animation and stuff. I mean, really, really impressive to have some links to the technical college system in Wisconsin. And then we're also joined by a whole host of freelancers and other artists that we bring in on a contractual basis based on project. So that's kind of our team and where we're heading. So what are we going to do the rest of the night? We need your help. We've got 3 really practical things that you can do right now if you want to take a next step with us. We can go to one of these workshops or offer to host one. We're right now planning on doing some of them in Tomahawk and Eau Claire. We're looking for other sites. Or sign up to come to one. We can't announce the dates just yet because we're waiting on IRB approval. So when we get that, we will have the exact dates. But when that's in place, we'll follow up with you. Also, we're just looking for these teachers. Call them out. Help us start identifying the excellence around the state. We're looking for the right partners. We don't want to do a public call for proposals just yet. We really want to hear from you, the people that you recommend. And this is kind of a really simple one, is just sign up to talk with us. Jim and I are doing a lot of phone calls and Google Chats, just kind of getting around and networking around the state. You can do that by going to that URL, all those 3 things, or somewhere around. We probably have an iPad that already has that up, but you all have smartphones anyway, right? Okay, I'll see if we can get that set up. The other thing is we've got some materials floating around, share them. We also created these 3 kind of flags, games and sims, learning through design, and back over here, we've got field research. And by those, we're going to have folks like Mark Berries and Shauna, and we've got John Fotenhauer's in the front. Jim Matthews is going to be among this group. And I would encourage you that there'll be a couple people with badges that look like this. Those are people that have worked with us in the past. And I would encourage you to talk with them and find out what that really looks like. Or if you've got some idea or something you want to hash out, that's the place to do it physically in the room. And then DJ Synoptic, John, is going to give us some more Chicago house music. So please enjoy the food, have some beverage, and just kind of mingle a bit. Thank you so much for coming out to the event. Should I say Wisconsin idea one more time? Okay, Wisconsin idea. Thank you all.